Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I'm joined again with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's going on, brother?
Just another day, and I'm excited to be here with you on another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. And with that said, my man, I'm going to go ahead and kick it back over to you to introduce our special guest, Dave.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, we're very excited today to have Dave from CatchALure on the show. He's got a unique entrepreneurial journey, and we're very excited to talk to him and to uncover what makes him tick and what makes CatchALure tick. So years ago, Dave came up with an idea for a fishing product. He does a lot of fly fishing, some conventional fishing, and he realized that there was a problem with people getting their lures and their flies caught in trees and bushes, and no good way to get them back. So, and especially with fly fishing, there's a lot of time and a lot of money caught up in people making flies, and they're expensive to just go out and buy. So he thought, hey, there's got to be a better way. And with all, that's kind of how a lot of products start is, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a solution. So he came up with a great idea for a solution. And a few years ago, he actually reached out to me at my product development company, and that's where I met Dave, and we've been working together ever since. And he's an awesome guy. It's very appropriate that we're talking on a Friday, because usually Dave calls me on a Friday to give me some good news about something. So Dave, really excited to have you on the show, man.
Andrew, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Clint, appreciate it as well. And thanks for having me on the show to talk about CatchALure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we'll start it off with, I think, the first question I was kind of excited to ask you about, and we actually talked about a little earlier today, is, Dave, you still have a full-time job, and you're still, and you're full force ahead with CatchALure, and, with wearing all the hats, with CatchALure. And so, what has that been like to balance both of those things? And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that, at some point in their journey, whether they still have a full-time job or whether they had one at some point when they started their side hustle. What has that balance been like for you?
Honestly, it's probably been one of the most challenging balances that I have had to perform. I work for a company not even related to CatchALure and the fishing industry at an executive level. So the pressures are real every day for that particular company to drive sales and have vision for them, because they depend on me quite substantially. And at the same time, to then take my focus off of that and then put it to your side hustle, which is CatchALure, and have to be engrossed in that and literally touch every level, from product development, which Andrew, you and I have worked extensively. I don't know how many iterations. I think we're well into the 80s to get those iterations into a functional model, then to work the bugs out, then to change your hat and go into a marketing person, and then have to go into a videographer and picture taker and do all these unique things. It's been quite the challenge to balance both of those, but I'm happy to say that I can do them both very well, and to my surprise. So keep on doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I do think that I know the way that you work, and I know that you're giving it 110%. And probably more at your job, and then definitely with CatchALure. So, some people might really I think the challenge maybe is not just trying to do both of those things, but also be really good at both of those things, and living up to your end of the bargain for both of them. So, I think that's also very, very good to point out, that you're working hard at both of them. You're not like slacking off one place or the other, but yeah, it is having both of those commitments is tough. And, I think when you start to get sales though, and you start to see it go, the side hustle kind of go in the right direction, then that makes it even more rewarding, so.
Yeah, it's interesting when you dumb it down, when you boil it down to what you want, which is obviously you want to create a revenue stream, right? I mean, that's the whole idea behind inventing something. You have to say, I think Mr. Wonderful at Shark Tank said it best, right? Is it inexpensive and does it solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
Where it saves people money. And the answer is yes to CatchALure. And you would think, okay, well, that's going to automatically add up to big dollars based upon what you've done in your market research. Well, the joke was on me. because it is not a linear path from A to D. It is your A, B, C, D, and you're going down the alphabet and you get the Z and you figure, okay, well, that's going to be it because you have some revenue come in. And Andrew, you and I have seen that. And then all of a sudden you're back at A again, trying to redevelop. And I guess as it's gotten closer to what I think is going to be a breakthrough, because we've sold thousands of these fly fishing CatchALures. We have no customer complaints whatsoever. If anything, it's I'm always checking Amazon to find out what feedback has been left for the product. And as I've always suspected, it's a damn good product. 4 stars, 5 stars. Wow, I can't believe this thing works.
Yeah.
So easy to use. Why didn't I think of that? I mean, all these buzzwords that we hear out there of a great product, but yet the industry is slow to turn. So that's always the big question mark.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like that you're the true definition of hustling, right? You're out there making it happen as an entrepreneur. You're doing it. And like Andrew said, you saw that market need. And me having experience growing up fishing, I grew up in the country fishing and getting things stuck in trees. That's like the definition of fishing, right? It's like, oh man, I just spent a whole bunch of money. I'm not a fly fisher, but that's nothing against that. But I grew up on ponds, lakes. And so we're out there throwing it in the water and there's always trees, right? Because it's always the honey spot.
Yeah, right.
And you're always getting caught up and it's your most expensive lure. And you're like, you can't get it. It's like, it won't come out. You're having to sacrifice your life to get it most of it, right?
right. Yeah. So growing up conventional fishing, right? Because that's what I did. I turned into a fly fisherman later on, but conventional fishing, like you were saying, Clint, right? Take my allowance, go down, buy a couple MEP spinners, go down to the Musconecton, which is a great river where I live, and toss that thing right in a tree, and it's 4 feet away from me. And I'm thinking, I can touch it with my rod, right? But I can't get it because the line's all coiled around the tree branch. And you do the herk and jerk, and the next thing you know, it's a bird's nest, and it's like, okay, that's gone. And you snap it off, and you think to yourself, it's a perfectly good lure. I just can't get it. And so I think even at an early age, I was already wrapping my head around the concept of how can I get that back? I've got this pointer, this 7-foot extender that I carry around with me. How could I utilize it to get it back?
Yeah, so that was kind of the aha moment, right? When you realized you could touch it with the end of your rod, but you couldn't actually, the end of your rod didn't really help to get it down. So
right, Clint. I mean, have you ever tried to break braided line? It's
I've tried everything. It's like, it's just hard. It seems like it's like right there at your fingertips, right? You're like, I can reach it with a rod, but I cannot get this thing out of the tree to save my life right now.
It was wild. It was funny with Andrew. I mean, here we are, we're getting to know each other, and Andrew didn't have, I should say he's lucky enough not to get into fishing. Maybe that's it, right? And,
yeah.
And I'm like, Andrew, we got to make this cutter better. We got to make it better. We got to make it better. And he's tightening up on the tolerances, and he's trying to understand my verbiage to take care of the problem. But I can tell you this, CatchALure cuts braided line like absolute butter.
That's awesome.
It cuts it better than any clipper out there that you could buy in the store. And all you have to do is use it once, and you're going to say to yourself, man, why didn't I think of that? I hear it said all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting too with you is, Dave, I think you thought of that. Like you said, you thought of that idea early on, right? So it had been many years from when you came up with the idea to when you really started to do something about it. And when you came to me and, you wanted to work on a formal development of it. Would you do that differently in any way, or did it just kind of, did it have to take that long, or would you have jumped on your idea right away? What kind of advice would you have about taking action?
That's a great question. So for your viewers out there, to give them an idea, I mean, I'm 52 now. I thought of the idea, well, we said when I was 12, just the idea of I wish I had something. Came up with the idea with a raw prototype when I was 25. Couldn't chase it because I had 3 kids, and life gets in the way. You guys get it.
Sure.
I mean, all of us, all your viewers. I mean, life is getting in the way right now in an exponential way right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew it would work. I have to tell you though, I think if I chased it in my 20s and my 30s, it would have just ended up on the rocks as just a destructive dream. But because of, weaving through life's process and understanding the sales process, and understanding how wholesalers think, and understanding pricing, understanding that you're coming into the market as a new product and a disruptive product. I had a fishing company tell us, we're not in the business of getting lures back. We're in the business of selling them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, oh crap, I'm that guy. I'm going to be a market disruptor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're out on that island, and you realize, you know what? Not only did you invent it, now you got to row it to shore and pedal it. Yeah. And what an undertaking. Not for the faint of heart. That's for darn sure. Yeah,
man. Yeah. So with you saying that, and you having to wear all these hats, from your full-time job to CatchALure and then having your hands on every piece of CatchALure through this journey, what has been your favorite thing about the entrepreneurial side of things?
Well, if we're talking about the product, Clint, I still fly fish. There's been a lot on the upside of things. And by the way, for your viewers, there's less ups than there are downs. That's for darn sure. I mean, you're crawling in the sewer a lot, but when I'm out fly fishing and, that river malaise sets in, too much time in the sun, you get a gust of wind, you're hunting the fish and you kind of change your angle, and all of a sudden, whammo, you get a nice streamer caught in the tree. I'll look up and I'll say, okay, I can't get that out through regular means of kind of tugging on the line a little bit. You take out the CatchALure, you clip it to your rod, or you use the telescopic version. You reach up there, you pop that baby right off the tree, the line falls out, you retie, and you think to yourself, and say for your viewers, holy shit, did I think of this thing? This is awesome.
That is awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like probably an out-of-body experience where you kind of forget for a second. You think, I got this product somewhere. I mean, it is a fully developed and product with consumer packaging, and you could buy it on the shelf. It looks like a product you can just buy on the shelf of any outdoor sport retailer, and it's just like, you kind of think, wow, did somebody else develop this, or did I just buy this from the store and because I needed a solution or what? So I think when you really validate your the problem, and you validate it with using your product to solve the problem that you had in the first place. It's like, and you didn't even think about it, because I think sometimes we create problems for solutions, and with CatchALure, it's not the case. It's a significant problem that a lot of fishermen have, and it's a really good solution. So like, without even thinking about it, you just reach into your vest and use it, and I'm sure it's easy to forget, wow, I actually invented this thing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting. So there's the consumer part of it, right? Then there's the inventor part, and you really, it's a multifaceted pie that you're dicing up as an individual. But then you look at it from a conservation standpoint. There are lures and flies and Clint, you fish. I mean, there's stuff left everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter what type of fishing you do. One guy said to me, "You got to risk it to get the biscuit," and that's and so it's great for the mangroves down in Florida, right? If you're flipping flies or any type of lure in there, up in the northern part of America.
Yeah.
Western, it doesn't matter wherever you go. CatchALure applies.
That's
There's
awesome.
no doubt.
Yeah. And if anybody out there has really funny videos of you trying to get a lure back, Dave would love that. So
yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of gifts out there for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, so we got your favorite thing. I mean, that makes a lot of sense about, if you are connected to the product or the service or whatever, and you really enjoy, for you, it's great because you really enjoy fishing. So it's easy for you to interact with the product and do testing and all that stuff.
But he's a perfect example though of somebody like taking a passion, right? Like something that he enjoys. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand. They try to force their entrepreneurial journey on something that like the quick or easy money, right? Like they digital marketing or that's big right now. Let me get into it. But that's not their passion, right? They get into it and they hate what they're doing. Like, what am I thinking about? And that's where a lot of they can't break through that wall. And I'm sure Dave has faced struggles along this path, like, right? I mean, it probably hasn't been an easy path, but look, you found something, you developed the product and something that you enjoy. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. And there's an old saying out there, Clint, don't turn your passion into a profession because then it becomes work. Right.
That's true.
And you're out there, and you're thinking, I just want to get away from the world for a little bit, so I'm going to go fly fishing, or I'm going to go fishing, or you're going to walk a creek, or you're going to walk a canal, and there you are walking along, thinking, oh look, there's a lure in a tree. There's one in the tree.
Yeah.
There's one in the tree, and
you can't escape it.
You can't escape it. So then you have to do something about it. You have to become a videographer now.
Yeah.
So I live by a fly fishing stretch back here. That's a catch and release area. The trees are loaded back there with flies out of nowhere. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I got to set my camera up out there. And then all of a sudden now you're a videographer. I didn't want to be that guy, but guess what? You want to push your product forward, you have to be that guy.
Yeah. You have to be able to connect with people and show them, what the advantages of it and how it works. And even if you're just creating some content of you fishing or, giving people some help, some helpful advice about anything fishing related, it might not have anything to do with your product. That's still helping them, building some trust. But it's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So you definitely have to have a plan with that. So, Clint, you were talking about passion, and I always think that's an interesting thing when you get started, whether or not people start businesses because, it's a passion project or because they're really mostly focused on the financial gain and the business part of it. For you, Dave, I think, probably what I would guess is when you first started it or when you first came up with the idea, it was more of like a passion. But when you really decided to dig in and start a business around the product, was it was it more out of, was it more of a passion project still, or were you focused on developing a product that you could sell for financial gain? So you were more into the business part of it?
Great question, right? So we need to jump in the Wayback Machine and go back about 50 years. So there's so my dad, God bless. I mean, he's invented two products that are sold in tool stores to this day. He was on the verge of breaking through. He made a huge mistake. Just at that point, a company, Sears, which is now defunct, and Thomas and Betts, which is still in business today, offered to buy his product. And he, at the end of the day, blew the play by thinking he was bigger than the product itself. My product, my way. You guys go and do what you need to do, but I'm gonna rule the world. And I can tell you this. I can tell your entrepreneurs out there, don't be thinking that way. There's big companies out there, and they went right around him when they went right around his patent. I have a patent on CatchALure. Always scares me, what people can do out there. And so he failed, and he went back to work, and I think he drank himself into the dirt because of that depression. And so you know what? I picked up the pieces with CatchALure. I made my share of failures along the way, well before then, but they just trained me for this point to realize you're not bigger than your product, and you're not bigger than any industry out there. You need to be partners with those industries. So as far as the passion goes, you learn from the mistakes in the past, you try not to repeat them in the future, and maybe, just maybe, you can get through the slipstream and be that guy where everybody says, oh yeah, well, he invented something, so of course he was going to be a millionaire. I'm not there yet.
I mean, you're right, because so many people think just because you invented something, or it was, it broke through and you have all this money laying around, and it's like, that is not always the case. Even though your product solves a huge problem that fishermen have, you're still finding the challenges of making it bigger, because again, you're going against the grain when it comes to these guys. Like, no, dude, we don't want CatchALure out there, right? Because we want people to come buy lures because they're hung in the tree.
Right.
Yeah, because from a business perspective, they're thinking about it purely by the numbers, and they don't care what it is necessarily that they are selling, as long as they are selling more of it. And lures for the big guys represent an ongoing replenishable product that people are going to buy over and over and over and over again. And that's, you can't blame. I mean, it's kind of like the razor blade model. You might only buy a couple rods in your life, but you're going to buy hundreds of lures. And so that's where they're really making a lot of money. And you're going against that. And ironically, those are the companies who, a lot of them, that you would want to partner with to sell the product. So
right. It's interesting too. I mean, if you take a look and you leave a fly in your fly box over a certain amount of time, or a lure in your tackle box over a certain amount of time, and again, Clint, I'll go back to you. I mean, being the guy who fishes here, they don't last forever. They sit there, they rust in the tackle box, they get old and gnarly looking, and there's just a point in time that Therodynamics has pushed that through its life cycle. Exactly. I'm just the guy who stepped in the middle of that and said, cut the line, because that's what's securing you to the problem for the most part, and get your lure back and be able to use it for a little bit more of an extended time until Therodynamics makes that lure or fly defunct.
Exactly.
It seemed pretty easy to me, but I guess to these bigger guys out there, they're getting I don't know, cold feet, whatever you want to call it, even though we're all friends on Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
They see what I'm doing out there. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, they're keeping an eye on it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
That's good. Yeah, so Dave, with that, man, as we go into this and we're still focused, and I want to continue on the path of CatchALure, because I think it's an amazing product. I definitely checked your website out. my dad, family, I mean, we grew up fishing. They're huge into fishing. You know, I have an uncle that takes people to sea and it does all kinds of crazy things in the fishing game. But like when it comes down to it, with CatchALure, what's been the most critical thing you do every day to be productive outside of your full-time job, right?
Oh, wow. Man, that's a tough question, Clint.
We got the hard hitters here.
Yeah, right. Great. No, it's a great question. You guys got and I love it. The entrepreneurial life, man. It's a great idea for a podcast because it gets to the nuts and bolts of it. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. You know, everybody sees Shark Tank. No way.
Yeah.
No way. I'm jumping on that show. I'm not gonna have some guy embarrass me because he's holding all the cookies, right? Right? I'm not gonna be his show dog and jump through the hoops and embarrass myself. So I wake up every day. I go down into my office. I turn on my computer. I look at my social media. I always carry a pad with me. So if I'm sitting out back having a beer, or if I'm down in my office and something enters my mind, I jot it down and I think to myself, that'd be a great idea for a video, right? Or that'd be a great idea for anything CatchALure related. And you know, it's just the way my mind. I'm almost to the point now where it's almost like it's an epiphany, and I've got to write it down or I forget it. And then I get on it to chase it. And then the weeks go by and I've wasted time, money, resources, and it doesn't matter. I put it out there anyway and see if it sticks or not.
That's an awesome answer, man. I think if you put things out into the universe, like you think of that, jot it down, guys. I mean, if you get anything from what Dave just said, things that, you know, just come off of whim or something that goes through your head, don't forget it because eventually it can be gold.
Yeah, you never know when that lightning is going to strike too. So yeah, it's really important to write it down and just have a list. Whether you like to write, you know, actually handwrite things. I don't, because my handwriting's terrible. So I have to type everything out. But even in my phone, I'll just come up with an idea for the show, for product development, for whatever, for CatchALure, you know, when Dave and I are working on something for it, and I'll just write it down and at least go back to it at some point later when I have the time. But that's really critical because sometimes I think that we have a really good idea and we think, oh man, I'm going to remember that months from now because it's such a good idea. And then the next day you're like, what the heck was that I wanted to do? You know, I have no idea what it was. And you know, no doubt you'll come up with more good ideas, but it's just so important to write everything down and kind of keep it as organized as you possibly can.
Yeah, you know, another thing too, Andrew. Just you know, as you're talking here, one thing that I did not expect during this journey is to have someone who is a great partner, and that's you, brother. I mean, I'm telling you, right? You know, because what's interesting is that when I get tired of pushing the wheelbarrow out of nowhere, you call me up and you text me, you're like, "Hey man, what's going on?" and stuff like that. And you and I, we could talk for weeks on end, or have a lot of weeks in between. But that motivates me to say, yeah, that's right. I got to get back on this. And you know, you put on your shoulder pads and your helmet, and you go out there and you start hitting it again. And you hope to God that one day, you know, you're having a beer somewhere in, you know, in Florida at a nice hotel, and you're saying, "Yeah, I made it," and then you realize it's actually the relationships that surrounded you to help you push forward. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dave. And yeah, I think that really helps to have somebody to work with, you know, somebody to bounce ideas off of, and having a good business partner really, really, really helps because, you know, especially to kind of pick the other person up when they're not excited about it, because there's always times where, you know, either partner or both are just feeling bummed out. But if it's more than just you, it's so much easier to kind of carry each other through those those times when it's just feels like, man, we're not getting anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
And even when you are getting somewhere and things are happening, it's still a roller coaster. You know, there's still good days and bad days. And, you know, I mean, we'll get really excited about something that happens with CatchALure, you know, one day, and then 2 days later, it's like, feel like the complete opposite. So yeah, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I was thinking of another positive too, is that the relationships that I've made with CatchALure in the fly fishing industry. It's interesting. A guy like Tim Flagler, who's from Tightline Productions, who works closely with Orvis and Temple Fork Outfitters. I mean, these are big companies out there in the fly fishing world. And when Tim saw CatchALure, he's like, "Hey, man, I want to do your video." Thinking to myself, "Who are you?" I didn't even know, right? And then you go forward into some of these fly fishing shows, and you see folks like Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing, which is for guys with PTSD when they come back from war. And, you know, and there you are talking with their CEO and other guys out there, and you befriended them, and you start to get into this family. And then the world starts to get a little smaller, and you see these guys at different fly fishing shows. And there's this one gentleman, Adam from Temple Fork Outfitters. He bought a CatchALure, Andrew, when you and I were at the Virginia show about 2 years ago on a whim. He's like, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot," you know, and walked away kind of half quirked. Came back to the Virginia show this year. He bought 3 more off me. He invited me to meet all his friends. He absolutely loves this thing. And he said, "I love being in Texas and I'm fly fishing and I take this thing out and click it on my rod and somebody goes, 'Dude, what are you doing?' He said, 'Watch this,' and it'll get his fly right out of the tree." He goes, "I know the guy who did that." Well, you know what? Awesome. Those are great relationships. That's awesome. They can forge that just from a product, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can make spokesmen out of your, you know, out of customers. And that's really cool, especially when you can get influencers to do it, people who have some authority in fishing, and that really helps. But I think it's even more satisfying than having somebody who immediately gets it and they buy it, whatever your product is. I think it's more satisfying to have somebody who doesn't get it and you say, "Here, try this," or they reluctantly, they're like, "I'll try it, but maybe I'll return it." And then they turn into like the biggest advocate because they can't believe how well it works. I mean, I think that's super satisfying. And another sort of the next level, you know, you have the validation where you use it and just naturally, you know, you need it and you have it and you use it. That's one level of validation. I think the next level is when you get customers who just, you know, they can't stop talking about it. So that's very cool.
And then it comes everything that we talked about comes back to that one point in time where the person says, or the end user says, "Geez, why didn't I think of this?" Right? All that work. Why didn't I think of this? And then the way they go to use the product, happily ever after. Perfect story.
Yeah, exactly. There's awesome. There's so many people also that think of things but don't action them, right? Like, like, you know, maybe you were not the only 12-year-old to ever think of like about that specific product or whatever, or about that problem. I mean, obviously, I don't think you had the picture of the actual product in your mind then. But I mean, there's always things I'm doing that I'm like, why hasn't something been invented to fix this problem yet? Because it's a huge problem, you know? Right. And so there's other 12-year-olds out in the world, probably, you know, at any other age as well, is like, why isn't there not a product that's fixed this problem yet?
Yeah. Right. Well, you know, what was gratifying was when I first released CatchALure on the comments on Facebook, one of the guys underneath there said, "Hey, dude, look, somebody stole your product idea." So someone thought, "Hey, this is a good idea. Why can't I take my rod and use it to reach, you know, a fly that's up in the tree?" But the whole idea of manifesting, right, make it a reality. And Andrew, that's where you and I met long ago, which I think was a miracle. Is, you know, you took the time and the patience. I mean, I have all the prototypes, all the iterations that we did. I mean, there's some ugly looking iterations that we had back in the day, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some whoppers in there. You look at it, you're like, oh my God, look at this piece of crap, you know. But we trimmed it down and got it to work and honed it down and had to lighten it, right? We had to core it out to get it even lighter. I mean, we maximized every possible thing. And then I think I remember to Andrew, we're around the 60th iteration, and I said, oh shit. And he said, what? I said, we need to add the loop. We need to add the loop for a lariat, you know, for some kind of a zinger, so they can put this on their vest. And you're like, okay, you know, and then to the drawing board we went again. So
exactly. Yeah. It's amazing how sometimes even the smallest products there's so much detail packed into that, you know? So some people, you know, they look at something and just think, oh man, that's so simple. And it would be so easy to design that or develop that, but they're not realizing that actually to make things, it's easy to make things very complicated, you know, and make them costly and make them clunky. It's much easier to do that than to make something simple and easy to use and intuitive. So that's, but so sometimes it's difficult to even realize how much it really does take to get something to market. And, I mean, yeah.
I'm thinking so. I was at a fly fishing show, and you know, the product's $19.95, right? You know, you use it 4 times and you make your money back. And so the guy pays me $20, and he looks at me and he says, it's amazing what we'll spend to get our flies and lures back. And I said, yeah. I said, try over $100,000.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So it's you're just doing a service for everybody else who only has to pay $19.95 for it.
That is correct.
There's only one person who had to pay that $100,000 for it. That's awesome. Well, so you know, we wanted to ask. It's an interesting time that we're going through right now with the coronavirus, and you know, people working from home, and there's a lot of uncertainty with it. So we definitely want to address that. And what I'm curious is, Dave, what do you think now is a good time? Like, what do you think with the state of the world? Is it a good time to dig in and invest in your business, or is it not? You know, you're not just starting your business, but you're definitely working on growing it. So what do you think about starting or growing a business in a time like this?
Oh, tough question. Well, I mean, you know, health and family and faith, I mean, those are all the most important things in my mind. But if you roll finances into there's a lot of wolves at the door. So let me just expand on that. So since, you know, running ads, you know, email addresses, you know, any way to find a way to reach out to me, my phone gets bombarded by, you know, robocalls because of putting that in there. So let's call that a wolf. I've had 6 companies reach out to me promising the world. I had one guy absolutely tee off on me because he wanted me to pay him $9,000 to advance my product in his company. And I said to him, let me get this straight. I said, I've got the product, I've got the pricing. I said, I have an engineer, I have law, I have IP. I said, why do I need you? Right? And you just start to realize that there's a lot of wolves out there. So if somebody's going into business and they're thinking about how they need to break through, they've got to look at it from every angle. Is it going to be worth it in the end? Is there going to be an ROI, or is this just a fantasy that's going to pass by? Because there will be pain, guaranteed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, I think there's with what's been going on recently, there's a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty, and sometimes that uncertainty leads to, and I know Clint, you've kind of run into this firsthand. I think we all have to some degree, but you know, there's uncertainty about how to market your product, or service or what you should do to invest at a time like this. And there's definitely things that you can do in a time like this. You can use your time wisely, especially being at home, to really double down on some things where you have more time to do it. Maybe creating more content, maybe reaching more people on Facebook or Instagram, because now there's a lot more people who are at home, on those kind of platforms. So it's really interesting how different companies are taking advantage of the time. Not necessarily there's definitely some wolves out there, and I think I've gotten more spam calls in the last few weeks than I have in a long time. So that's kind of scary, because like I don't pick up the phone even if I know who it is and I'm busy. But so I'm not, I'm not worried about me, but there's some people who, are kind of vulnerable to that kind of thing. But yeah, I think there's probably ways in this climate to really dig in, use your time wisely, and kind of catapult yourself through it, so that by the time we're through all this craziness, you're in a really good position to, maybe more people have discovered you because they're at home, they're not doing too much else, and say, let me go on Instagram. They see your product and they're like, hey, I actually can self-distance and fish, and I need this. Or they're like, I'm going to buy this product now because I know I'm going to use it in a couple months. So yeah, it's really interesting how different companies are responding differently to it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the one thing I got to tell you, I hate to say it because I've become that guy, but I love seeing kids out there fly fishing at young ages, right? And I see them. Mm-hmm. I see them get caught up in the tree branches, and you can see them kind of tugging away, and you think to yourself, I got an idea for that kid out there. He's gonna buy my product. And by the way, that's a generational thing. Mm-hmm. I'm just finding that the younger generations, they're like, what a great idea. Boom, they buy it. The older generations, the older guys, man, they're like, oh, yeah, I don't know. They get all crushy, and you're like, okay, come on, just move on down the road, because for that one guy, there's 10 kids out there that want something like that. And Clint, that goes back to you and I fishing, right? It's like, there it is. It's brand new. It's right next to me, and I can't get it. It doesn't make any sense,
Yeah, exactly. And Andrew, I think going back to you talking about, investing in yourself right now, I think, and you said, like you said, I've been hit pretty hard. I own a digital marketing agency, and when this coronavirus thing came up, everybody's just freaking out, right? I mean, they don't know what's going on. They're calling me 95% of my clients were like, push pause on everything. I need a discount on this. I can't pay you now. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'm like, whoa, it got real for me, and I'm like, this is not what I expected. I thought, like, during this time, I'm sitting here trying to rationalize with them. Like, right now, there's going to be more people almost like 24/7 on the internet than ever before, right? Because people have to go to work, do things, but you have a lot of people sitting at home right now, more at one specific point in time, right? And I'm like, if anything, I can understand you pushing pause on some of like your ad spend and all that stuff, but organic and staying consistent and pushing pause on all that stuff that we created, right? The engagement that you're getting before, and now you're telling me to stop. I was like, I don't advise that, but I can't tell you what to do, right, as the business owner. But I mean, in this time, I think there's a huge advantage, and not to downplay the virus and the impact that it's having on people. And, as I just want everybody, like Dave was talking about, family, safe, everybody, I want everybody in the world to, got to take this thing seriously. But if you own a business, everybody's really, I know in North Carolina, we're considering ourselves essential, right? I go down the road and there's more people at the grocery store than I've ever seen before at one single time. And I'm like, we're definitely not practicing social distancing anywhere in our little location right here. I'm like, people are hanging on each other over at the gas station. I'm like, like whatever, man. It's like a party.
Like a party at Home Depot. Everybody's like, they're so excited to get all their home improvement stuff done now. And it's just like, hey, Home Depots are big spaces, but like, can everybody just stay away a little bit,
for a little while.
Actually practice it. But yeah, I think, it's a good point. And if there's one thing that I think that people could be doing, correct me if I'm wrong, right now, is content. There's always some piece of content that you can do that you don't need. I mean, think about big platform. Think about like Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and the big guys who have talk shows. Their business is content. They're still creating content. It might be at home. They've got their kids running behind them, but it doesn't matter. They're still going to create. They're never, ever going to stop creating content, and there's no reason to stop. So, and now is almost, for some businesses, is almost the time. I was talking to one of my friends the other day. He's like, kind of seeing this as an opportunity to, lock himself in his house and just write blogs all day. And those blogs today, written today, will pay off 6 to 8 months from now. And he'll see that organic traffic. And Dave, I know you were working on a video yesterday for Instagram, and, so I know you're working on some content, and that's really good stuff. I mean, that's, the kind of stuff you can do now that will have an impact later. Yeah.
Well, if you look at how money grows, right? If you look at what labor is, it's effort, and effort, no matter what it is, always seems to get paid, right? Mm-hmm. You always get something back from work. And mm-hmm. You're right. That's what everybody should be doing with their time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but how much could you really lay on the sofa before you get to the point, right, where you're like, this is not right. There's nothing good about this. I have to constructively, do something. So
yeah. There's only so many episodes of Tiger King before it's over, and then
right. I've already binge watched Ozark, so that's over.
Oh man, yeah, I've got to get to that. That's the next one after Narcos Mexico. So, oh man, well,
Dave, man, and Andrew, I think we could sit here and talk all day. I mean, Dave's an awesome guy. And it's been awesome to actually firsthand get to hear the relationship, because I know Andrew is an awesome dude and somebody that's, we kind of hit it off the first time we met. And that's why we decided to start this, two entrepreneurs going at it, and then hearing his story and hearing how big of an impact he even has just in his niche and his industry is pretty amazing, because, it just reaffirms that, I'm relying on the right guy. He's a good guy. And I know, Dave, just this little short amount of time that we're talking, that you're a great guy as well. But we want to close this out with one last question for you. And, if you were to give one piece of advice or tip to our listeners to add value to their entrepreneurial journey from what you've been through, what would that be?
Make sure it's worth your time, because ultimately it's going to take time away from you. So just make sure it's worth it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And that's important, because nothing is just going to be an overnight success. Usually a multi-year and one overnight success is how it happens. So I think that's really important to consider.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dave. Guys, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Dave's working on, check out CatchALure.com, CatchALure.com. If you like what you heard today, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other major podcast directory. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
We also want to give a special shout out to our family and friends, to include all of our listeners, followers, and subscribers, as well as Dave for being on the show today. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget, guys, to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.